Good afternoon. We're on the territory of the signatories of Treaty 7, and I also want to acknowledge the Métis people of Alberta who share a very deep connection with this land. We're joined here today by Desiree Juan, a parent here in the city of Calgary, as well as Rosman Valencia, who is our Alberta NDP candidate for Calgary-East, and of course by our leader, Rachel Notley. I'd also like to thank the Centre for Newcomers for hosting us today and for all of the important work that they do. The last few years have been a challenging time for Alberta schools and for students. Not only have students and educators had to deal with the obstacles that have come along with trying to educate in the middle of a global pandemic, but they've also had to implement a horrible UCP curriculum. And while dealing with being understaffed and underfunded because of the choices that UCP have made in the last 3 years, they've done their best. I'm proud of the work that the previous NDP government did on the curriculum. And that included the commitment to developing a Filipino language and culture curriculum for the province of Alberta, something that the UCP promptly canceled when they formed government in 2019. In addition to English and French, there are currently 26 other languages available for students to study in Alberta. Having language options available as part of Alberta's curriculum is vital to a robust culture and function for our province, and it's something that we must continue to develop and expand on. We've heard from many members of the Filipino community that, and parents like Desiree, that they want to see the work completed on a Filipino language and culture curriculum so that their kids can easily access these skills and understandings in school. So now I'd like to turn things over to Desiree to share her thoughts.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Sarah. It is an honor to be alongside leaders who believe in the preservation of the language and culture in a beautiful land such as Alberta and Canada. I am very blessed to have been given this opportunity to be here with my family. I am married and have 2 daughters who are both in grade school. We are newcomers who just arrived last year. My daughters are bilingual, both in Filipino and English. They were able to adjust easily, for they effortlessly communicated with Filipinos here in Calgary. The girls have so much respect for the titos and titas, lolos and lolas, that they do the mano po, which is getting the hand of an elderly and putting it on their foreheads, and saying the po and the opo. These are common traits that are very Filipino, and we hope will be carried on to the next generations. Of course, alongside other values like helping and supporting the family, hospitality, generosity, and others. Honestly, some of my daughter's Filipino classmates who do not speak Tagalog ask to be taught. Of course, they oblige, but having support will make it easier for them. To share with you, as per the research made by the University of Pittsburgh, maintaining the native language results in meaningful communication and respect in relationships, especially with parents, grandparents, and relatives. This also allows greater involvement in the community. Further, being bilingual benefits the economy and creates job opportunities. And lastly, this has cognitive and academic benefits. Also then, Education Minister David Egan in the Calgary Sun article said that language is where culture resides. And also teaching language is a sign of respect and acknowledgement. This is a very beautiful and powerful statement. Unfortunately, I learned that only Father Lacombe High School offers the Tagalog language as a curriculum. We don't have a choice but to accept the current system. Although we hope that the NDP's plan in 2019 of including the Filipino language as part of the curriculum pushes through. With this, you are helping us rear our children to have a personal connection with other Filipinos and our culture. Thus, they will also have equal respect and appreciation for the other cultures here in Canada. Maraming salamat po, NDP. Thank you, NDP, for doing this initiative and pursuing it. You have our support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here's Rosman, our representative. Rosman, please. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Desiree. You are so right about the lack of choice you have to send your child to school to learn Tagalog, and about the Filipino culture puts your child and your family at a disadvantage in Alberta. I know that Alberta can be a warm, welcoming place, and that is something we will strive to fortify with an NDP government led by Rachel Notley. I moved here from the Philippines in 2015, studied at the University of Calgary, and became a teacher here. There is a large Filipino community in Calgary and in Alberta, and having strong ties to my culture made me feel welcome. I want to ensure those opportunities are available to the next generation of Filipino Albertans, as we are one of the fastest growing ethno-cultural communities in the province, and we have the second largest community here across the country. I can say how important it is that we have not just access to this option for families, but a standardized curriculum across the province that will set the children up for the future success. And we must develop this alongside the Filipino community and educators across the province. To speak more of that on that, I would like to turn things over to the NDP leader, Rachel Notley.
Well, thank you so much, Rosman, and thank you, Desiree, for joining us here today and telling us your story as well. And of course, thank you, Sarah. Giving families like Desiree's access to the best curriculum for their kids is an essential job of any government. And that's why we started the work to develop and introduce a Filipino language and culture curriculum back when we were in government. And it's why we have fought tirelessly against the backwards and inappropriate UCP curriculum for all Alberta children in our time as opposition. There are more than 216,000 people of Filipino heritage living in Alberta. And having a Filipino language and culture curriculum will ensure this vibrant community can continue to grow deep roots and to make this province even greater. By providing opportunities for students to learn in a variety of languages, it helps children and youth strengthen their ties to their cultural identity, maintain their heritage, and build important language and literacy skills. There's also a powerful economic case for teaching a wide range of language skills in all of our schools. These opportunities promote Alberta as a global destination for anyone seeking to build a career, start a business, or raise their family. And that's why I'm so proud to announce that should we earn the privilege of forming the next government in Alberta, the Alberta NDP will restore our plans to develop a Filipino language and culture curriculum for Alberta students. Strengthening language programs based on local needs will help build a better future for the province, and as one of the fastest growing cultural communities in Alberta, we have heard the need for this curriculum from the community, and so we will deliver. We will work with the Filipino community to develop and implement this curriculum in our first term so that families across Alberta have access for the very best education for their kids, no matter what corner of the province they call home. So thank you very much for coming out to hear this announcement, and any one of us are happy to take any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you, Rachel. We'll now go to the media question portion. Just a reminder for those joining us on Zoom to use raise hand, and for those joining us on the phones to use the *9 function to get into the question queue. We will start with any questions in person. Seeing no questions in person, we'll go to the phones. Our first question comes from Lisa Johnson from the Edmonton Journal. Go ahead, Lisa.
Is a little bit off topic from your announcement, but I'm wondering, Rachel, if you can comment on Premier Danielle Smith's remarks yesterday, claiming that she has spoken and speaks regularly with Crown prosecutors about cases involving COVID-19 fines. I'm wondering if you can elaborate a little bit on your opinion on that. I know we saw the comment from Irfan yesterday, but what do you think?
Sure. Listen, the comments made yesterday by Danielle Smith, as well as those that were caught on film a couple months ago, that were sort of revealed or shared more widely yesterday, those comments are deeply, deeply troubling to me. They represent a very inappropriate attempt to interfere with the administration of justice here in Alberta. And it also represents, yet again, another failure by the UCP to demonstrate that they even understand the concept of the rule of law. And all of that, of course, leads to undermining our economic and social security in this province. Now, I understand that since Danielle Smith made those comments, we then had the specter of the Justice Minister contradicting those comments, saying, oh no, she never spoke to Crown prosecutors, she just spoke to me and the deputy. So now we have a situation where either Danielle Smith is interfering with the administration of justice while our Justice Minister is lying about it. Yeah. Or we have the Justice Minister telling the truth, and we have the specter of our Premier lying to Albertans about what she is doing in order to cater to a very small group of extremist supporters. Both actions undermine the rule of law. Both actions undermine the confidence in our justice system that Albertans can appreciate. And as a result, both potential scenarios drive the need for an independent investigation into what is happening and what did happen. Albertans deserve to hear the answer of that independent investigation before they cast their ballot in the next election.
Do you have a follow-up, Lisa?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm wondering on a practical level, I mean, hypothetically, if we don't hear back from the Premier's office any kind of clarification today, and we're left with these questions that you've raised here, does this put the outcomes of legal cases that are currently before the courts involving COVID fines at risk of being undermined?
Quite honestly, the specter of the Premier declaring that she is regularly speaking to Crown prosecutors about matters that are within the justice system and alive and active undermines not only those particular cases, but it undermines the whole system of justice in the province because it is, as I said, a gross interference. It's political interference with the justice system. That's not what we do here in Canada. The rule of law is the very foundation of our democratic system, and this undermines that. So the Premier must come out, answer questions, clarify her position, and then in addition to that, she must make it very clear to all law enforcement officials that they are to absolutely ignore any and all statements that she has made on whether matters should be prosecuted or not prosecuted. And then furthermore, this matter needs to be investigated because we have the Justice Minister contradicting the repeated statements of the Premier. And all of this is a big mess that undermines Albertans' faith.
All right, we'll go to our next question. It's from Dean Bennett. Go ahead, Dean. Your line is open.
Thanks. Hope you can hear me, Rachel.
Sure can, yeah.
Okay. You just a couple questions. Sorry, following up on what Lisa has been asking. You referenced that interview, the year-ender interview, in your remarks earlier on. In that interview, the Premier actually stresses that she's told prosecutors that the public is no longer on side with these prosecutions, and they should consider that when they pursue these cases. Do you know where that's coming from? Is there been how do we know that the public is no longer on side with this?
Well, we don't know if the public is or isn't. I suppose any poll can say any given thing, but that is not the point. That is not how our justice system works. That's not how the Crown makes decisions about what should be prosecuted. The Crown makes decisions about whether there is a law that has been broken and whether there is adequate evidence to suggest that there is a likelihood of conviction for somebody taking actions that broke the law. That is what the Crown is supposed to consider. That's what the rule of law looks like. We don't prosecute on the basis of polling numbers. And the fact that the Premier would actually say such a thing in a public setting like that is deeply, deeply concerning. This is a level of incompetence that is, I tell you, Dean, every day I think I've seen a new level, and then they reach even higher levels of incompetence, and each day is a new day, but it's deeply distressing overall.
Anything further, Dean?
Yeah, I wonder, Rachel, I feel like I'm feeling echoes here from the Arctic Winter Games comments. Here we have a case where the Premier says, sorry, COVID people, I'm not going to take the action I promised, but hey, I'm going to make calls, and I'm calling the Arctic Winter Games on this. Meanwhile, the Arctic Winter Games says that they never heard from her.
Right.
And they made this decision independently. And now it seems like we have the same kind of scenario unrolling here with the prosecutors. Is there a link here? What's going on?
Well, I think there's one of two things, and there's echoes from two very distressing examples of failed leadership by the UCP in the recent past. So the one example of failed leadership by the UCP in the recent past is where we had the almost unprecedented experience of having our justice minister pick up the phone and call a police chief in order to fix his own traffic tickets, something that you just don't see in mature democracies. And the fact that it took so long for them to understand how wrong that was really quite shocking. And then, of course, the other echo we have is of a premier who is caught very clearly in a lie. And so we've got one of those two things happening. We either have a premier taking the gross misjudgment of the former attorney general, who she is now made deputy premier, and repeating it and engaging in political interference with our justice system, which should be a job-ending action, quite honestly. Or we have yet another example of the premier being caught in a lie. And so we're in a position of a habitually lying premier. And that is something that should really cause Albertans to question whether they can count on her to lead this province in the future or now.
All right, we'll do just one more check for questions in the room. And we'll go back to the phones, back to Lisa Johnson from the Edmonton Journal. Go ahead, Lisa.
Hi, sorry to come back to this, but I just got a response from the Premier's office as you were speaking, Rachel, and I want to throw this at you to see if this changes your opinion of the situation. Premier Smith is saying that she is basically echoing what the Justice Ministry said yesterday and saying that she has had discussions with the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, and asked them to look into what options were available with respect to outstanding COVID-related cases. They advised me to take, I'm reading this verbatim now. They advised me to take that Crown prosecutors would independently make their decisions. She respects that independent process. And finally, she says, while my language may have been imprecise in these instances, I was referring to the process and discussions above and the advice I received from the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General. At no time have I communicated with Crown prosecutors. What say you to that?
I say two things. First of all, it is clear that in the two pieces of film where we have the premier on record, on film, it is clear that she was lying to people about what she had done in the past. That's the first thing. The second thing I would argue is that the statement, arguably even potentially on the issue of interfering with justice, takes things a bit further. The Premier should not be talking to the Deputy Attorney General about whether there is, quote, anything we can do about these charges. That doesn't make this problem any better. The Deputy Attorney General, in relation to these kinds of issues, is equally independent and entitled to a similar level of independence as those individual crowns are. So quite frankly, that doesn't make it any better. But in either event, we also have the specter of her repeatedly saying that she has spoken to, quote unquote, Crown prosecutors, and now she's saying she didn't. So it seems we have the worst of both worlds here. She's lying, and she is also continuing to interfere with the administration of justice.
Anything further, Lisa?
No, thank you very much.
All right, we'll do one last pass for questions on the phone. Just a reminder for those joining us on Zoom to use raise hand, and for those on the phones to use *9. Dean, I'm just going to ask you to unmute and clarify if you're looking for another question.
He's always looking for another question, isn't he?
Yes, I was just trying to make sure. Well, following up, I'm getting the same press release, and it frankly raises more questions than it answers, because it says, Premier says, I met with the prosecutors and asked what options were available. Meanwhile, in this year-end interview we referred to, she said she didn't ask options. She said, I wanted to let them know that the public has, no longer is interested in these things. The courts are jammed. She was actually making the case for not pursuing these things, not just seeking options. It sounds like I guess I'm asking you, how do we square these two things?
Well, you don't square these two things. She's scrambling. She's either lying now or she was lying then. Clearly, lying is happening. There's a lot of lying going on. Secondly, though, there is also clearly evidence of interference with the administration of justice. And I have to be clear with you again, Dean, and to everybody else. My understanding and my experience as a lawyer, as well as someone who's worked in the Attorney General's office as a chief of staff, as well as the former premier, the Deputy Attorney General, when it comes to individual matters that are before the courts, does not meet with the premier to have the premier try and coax him into changing what happens with respect to decisions. And so the meeting that she's now describing as somehow the alternative to the other meetings that she described, which apparently didn't happen even though she said they did, is also inappropriate. So what we now have is a clear set, a path of contradicting statements by a dishonest premier, as well as more evidence of the premier inappropriately interfering with the administration of justice.
All right, thanks, folks. That is our time today, so we will wrap.
Thank you.